On July 17, 1970, 5 convicts serving life sentences at Dorchester Penitentiary in New Brunswick, Canada, managed to escape. John Lee Parker, Jack Fisher, Sam Wetmore, George Hannington, and Lemuel Fleming had been meticulously planning their escape for months. Their goal was to flee to America, where they hoped to start anew, away from the authorities who knew them too well. In the dead of night, around 2 a.m., they made their move. They scaled the prison walls and started running north, aiming to turn west once they crossed the Memramcook River. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the escapees came upon what seemed to be an abandoned farm. Exhausted, hungry, and parched, they decided to take a chance and rest there, believing they had put enough distance between themselves and the penitentiary. The farm appeared dilapidated, its structures on the verge of collapse. Overgrown bushes surrounded the main house, which looked as if it hadn't been inhabited for years. The barn, too, seemed ready to crumble at any moment. Despite the eerie ambiance, they approached the house cautiously, splitting into 2 groups. 3 went to cover the back door, while the remaining 2 knocked on the front. After a tense wait, Jack emerged from the house, declaring it empty. Relieved, the group entered the house, searching for food and water. Inside, the house was in shambles, filled with filth and the stench of decay. Wild animals had clearly made the place their home. Their search for food yielded only a few cans of meat and beans. The water faucet was dry, so Jack sent Sam to look for a well. Minutes later, they heard Sam shouting from the barn. Racing outside, they found him in the dimly lit barn, staring at a peculiar sight. An old man with long silver hair and appearing around 60 years old stood eerily silent, watching them. The convicts were taken aback by his presence. Jack, ever the hothead, demanded to know who he was and if he lived there. The old man, after a prolonged silence, confirmed he had lived there for a long time, his voice calm and confident, tinged with an unplaceable accent. Jack, suspicious and irritated, ordered Sam and George to tie the old man to a chair with some baling twine. The old man did not resist or utter a word as they bound him. His silence and stoic demeanor unnerved John, reminding him of the evil he had seen in his own father. Jack, undeterred, questioned the old man about his life on the desolate farm. The old man responded with a cryptic story, claiming he was born in Sisteron, France, and had been cursed with immortality, yearning for death each passing day. As they absorbed the bizarre tale, Sam returned with the canned food and a bucket of water. The old man's unsettling calmness continued to haunt John. They ate in uneasy silence, each man lost in his thoughts, contemplating their next move. Jack decided they would travel by night to avoid detection, assigning George the first watch. Hours passed, and John was awakened by Lemuel for his turn on watch. He noticed the old man was still staring at him, unbothered by his bindings. As John ascended to the loft to keep watch, he accidentally fell asleep. He awoke to find dusk setting in, hurriedly checking on the others, only to discover the old man had vanished. The baling twine lay shredded on the ground, and panic set in. A noise from the back of the barn drew their attention. Jack, intent on finding the old man, ventured into the dark recesses of the barn alone. The remaining convicts, paralyzed with fear, heard a terrifying growl and Jack's scream, which was abruptly cut off. In a frenzy, they attempted to flee, but the barn doors were chained shut from the outside. Desperation set in as they searched for an escape, hearing another growl and Sam's agonizing screams as something attacked him. Lemuel and John, in a blind panic, ran through the barn, crashing into obstacles in the dark. John stumbled upon Jack, who was grievously injured but alive, and together they found a way out, squeezing through a hole in the barn's paneling. They fled through the night, finally reaching a road at dawn where they were apprehended by the police. Jack, though severely wounded, survived, but his left arm had to be amputated. The authorities were alerted, and an investigation of the farm ensued. When the police arrived at the farm, they were greeted by an overpowering stench akin to an animal's den. In the barn, they found the old man casually sitting in a chair and reading a book. When questioned, he responded with a chilling calm, "What took you so long?" He was arrested on suspicion of the murders of Sam Wetmore, George Hannington, and Lemuel Fleming. As the search of the property continued, they uncovered a hidden room beneath the barn, filled with bones from numerous victims, some with fresh tissue still clinging to them. The investigators were stunned by the sheer number of bodies, estimating up to 100 could be hidden on the farm. In the house, they discovered artifacts dating back to the 1700s, including a photograph of the old man from the 1850s, taken in France. His identity remained a mystery, as he never divulged his name, earning him the moniker, the Old Man. Despite extensive searches, George's body was never found. In 1984, after years in prison, the old man mysteriously vanished. Rumors persisted of a strange older man being seen on the outskirts of the farm, always disappearing into the woods. The new owners of the farm occasionally reported sightings of the eerie figure, standing silently and staring before melting back into the forest. When the warden questioned John Lee Parker about what he thought had killed his fellow convicts, John's answer was as chilling as it was unexpected: a werewolf. Jack, despite losing his arm, corroborated John's story, adding to the grim legend of the old man in the haunted farm. For years, the tale of the Dorchester Penitentiary escape and the horrors of the abandoned farm lingered, a dark chapter in New Brunswick's history. The old man, his true nature and origins shrouded in mystery, continued to be a ghostly presence, a reminder of the inexplicable and the terrifying lurking just beyond the edge of the known world. The disappearance of the old man from his prison cell in 1984 was an enigma that perplexed the authorities and the public alike. Despite extensive searches, no trace of him was ever found. Some speculated he had supernatural abilities, while others thought he had somehow manipulated his way to freedom. The farm, now abandoned and feared, became a local legend, a place where only the brave or the foolish dared to venture. Years passed, and the story of the old man and the doomed convicts became a macabre tale told around campfires. The farm's new owners, the Harrisons, initially dismissed the tales as mere superstition. They were a practical family, looking to make a new start away from the bustle of city life. However, it wasn't long before strange occurrences began to shatter their sense of normalcy. It started with small things: doors left open that had been closed, tools disappearing and reappearing in odd places, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. Mrs. Harrison often felt a chill in the air, even on the warmest days. Their dog, Rex, a normally brave German shepherd, would whimper and refuse to enter the barn. The Harrisons' teenage daughter, Emily, began to have nightmares of a silver-haired man watching her from the shadows. One evening, Mr. Harrison decided to investigate the barn, determined to put an end to the strange happenings. He armed himself with a flashlight and a shotgun, feeling both foolish and frightened. As he stepped into the barn, the familiar smell of decay and animal musk hit him. The moonlight streamed through the gaps in the old wooden walls, casting eerie shadows. Moving cautiously, he made his way to the back rooms where the convicts had met their fate. As he pushed open the door to one of the rooms, he heard a rustling sound. His flashlight beam fell on a pile of bones, picked clean, just as the police had described. Panic surged through him, and he turned to leave when he heard a voice, calm and cold. "What took you so long?" Mr. Harrison swung his flashlight around, and there, standing in the doorway, was the old man. He looked exactly as described in the stories. Long silver hair, piercing eyes, and an air of ancient malevolence. The old man stepped forward, and in that moment, Mr. Harrison understood the fear and horror that John Lee Parker and his companions had felt. In a voice that seemed to resonate with the very walls of the barn, the old man began to speak. "You should have heeded the warnings, Harrison. This land is cursed, and so are all who dwell upon it. I am bound to this place, a prisoner of time, and all who come here feed my endless hunger." Mr. Harrison, paralyzed by fear, could only listen as the old man continued. "Your daughter, Emily, she has already seen me in her dreams. She is marked now. You cannot escape the fate that awaits you all." With that, the old man vanished into the shadows, leaving Mr. Harrison trembling and alone in the dark. Desperate and terrified, Mr. Harrison raced back to the house, his mind reeling. He decided they had to leave the farm immediately. However, when he reached the house, he found the doors locked and his family missing. Frantically searching, he discovered traces of a struggle and claw marks on the wooden floors. In the following hours, the farm seemed to come alive with unseen forces. Mr. Harrison heard his family's voices calling out, mingled with unearthly growls. He realized with growing horror that the old man was not alone. Something else, something monstrous, was with him. The farm had become a prison for both the living and the dead. As dawn approached, Mr. Harrison made a last-ditch effort to escape, hoping to find help in the nearby town. He stumbled upon an old photograph tucked in a corner of the barn, showing the old man with a young woman. On the back it read, "My beloved Isabel, 1847. It dawned on him that the old man's torment was linked to a tragic past, and perhaps understanding it could offer a way to end the curse. Determined to save his family, Mr. Harrison delved into the history of the farm. He discovered that the land had once belonged to a French immigrant, Henri Dubois, who had moved to Canada in the 1800s with his wife Isabel. Isabel had died under mysterious circumstances, and Henri had disappeared shortly after. Locals believed he had dabbled in dark rituals, seeking to bring his wife back from the dead, but had instead cursed himself with immortality and a hunger for human flesh. Armed with this knowledge, Mr. Harrison sought out an old local priest known for his expertise in exorcisms and the supernatural. Father Callahan was skeptical at first, but agreed to help after hearing the urgency in Mr. Harrison's plea. Together, they returned to the farm, prepared to confront whatever malevolent forces resided there. The confrontation was brutal. As Father Callahan began the exorcism rites, the barn erupted with unearthly howls, and the old man appeared, more monstrous than before. His eyes glowed with a predatory hunger as he lunged at them. The struggle was fierce, with Mr. Harrison using all his strength to protect the priest. In the midst of the chaos, Emily's voice rang out, calling for her father. With renewed determination, Mr. Harrison fought his way to where he had heard Emily, finding her and the rest of his family bound in a hidden room. As he freed them, the old man let out a bone-chilling scream, his form shifting grotesquely. Father Callahan continued his prayers, the power of his words causing the old man to writhe in agony. Finally, with a final prayer, a blinding light filled the barn, and the old man let out one last ear-splitting scream before disintegrating into dust. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the farm fell silent. The Harrisons, though shaken, were finally free from the curse. The authorities were skeptical of Mr. Harrison's account, but could not ignore the evidence of the hidden bones and the strange occurrences reported by the new owners. The farm was condemned and eventually demolished, the land left to nature. The Harrisons moved far away, never speaking of the horrors they had faced, trying to rebuild their lives.